In this video, we're going to demonstrate the installation of our designer metallic epoxy flooring system. You can see here that the installer is using our 3-gallon kits, which are the most convenient and easy to use, and they've pre-mixed the metallic pigment into the A component of the 3-gallon kit. When your kit arrives, you'll open the lid and you'll see that there's a B component inside and then your 2 gallons of A resin in the bottom. So they've pre-mixed the pigments into the A component, and now they're ready to actually begin the installation of the floor. So the installer has removed the lid off of the B component, and he's adding that gallon into the other 2 gallons of the A resin in the bucket, and he's going to mix it all right inside of the pail that it comes in. You can see that he's setting his timer so that he knows the correct amount of time to mix the A and B components together for a proper mix, which we recommend to be 2.5 to 3 minutes. So he's using a mixing paddle on his electric drill, and he's going to mix those 2 components together inside the pail for approximately 2 to 3 minutes. Mixing of the A and B components is complete, and now the installer has begun to pour the mixed epoxy out onto the floor. Now they've taken this space and they've divided it into sections of about 360 square feet. And the reason for that is we recommend installing the metallic epoxy at a rate of about 60 square feet per gallon. Each of these kits is 3 gallons, so 60 times 3 is 180 square feet. Now they're using 2 colors, so that means they're actually going to be using one 3-gallon kit, in this case of orange gold, and then they're going to use a 3-gallon kit of wine red. So that means that this space has been divided into areas of about 360 square feet, allowing for those 6 gallons of mixed epoxy to be used in this section. So right now he's pouring out the orange gold randomly in ribbons all over the floor in no particular pattern. He's making sure that he gets some everywhere in that first 360 square foot section. You notice that he's wearing spiked shoes, which we have available on our website, and this is so that instead of creating full footprints with a regular shoe, you're just creating small dots in the floor which will close up on their own as you walk about the floor. A word of caution, the floor can be slippery as you're installing the epoxy because you're installing wet epoxy on top of the prime surface. So you want to walk with some caution so as not to slip on the floor. But he's going to empty out this whole 3-gallon kit of orange gold epoxy onto the area here. And you can actually see up on the left-hand side there's a piece of blue painter's tape on the wall, and this allows the installers to know where each 360 square foot section of the floor is, so that they can concentrate on applying the material just in that area. So now you can see they're applying the second color, which is wine red, and they're going to do the exact same thing. It's a 3-gallon kit, and they're going to spread it in this first 360 square foot section. They're doing it randomly over the entire surface of the floor. And again, they're wearing spiked shoes and just randomly pouring out ribbons of the wine red in the same fashion as they did the orange gold, being sure to get some product everywhere in that first 360 square foot section. So once again, the recommended coverage rate for our designer metallic epoxy system is approximately 60 square feet per gallon. Now when you do a two-color system like this, one 3-gallon kit will cover approximately 180 square feet on their own, but in a 2-gallon or a two-color system, you're going to use a 3-gallon kit of one color, which in this case is orange gold, and then a 3-gallon kit of a second color, which in this case is wine red. And because you're using two colors, you're going to spread those gallons, those kits, over a 360 square foot area. So both colors of the metallic epoxy have been randomly poured in ribbons throughout this first 360 square foot section of this floor. And now the epoxy is being spread with a flat blade squeegee. We have them available on our website. You want to use a flat blade squeegee, and he's basically just pulling the epoxy over the surface, not really putting any pressure on the squeegee. He's just moving it from side to side, spreading the epoxy over the floor. You'll notice that there's some bare spots being left, and that's okay. He's looking for just 90 to 95% coverage on the floor. Once they start rolling it, that's what will fill in all of the bare spots on the surface of the floor. So he's randomly just walking side to side, using the squeegee, not putting any pressure on it, and spreading the epoxy in this first section of floor. You see the other installer has begun to use a small weenie roller, and he's using that to roll epoxy towards the edges against the walls, making sure that there's some epoxy everywhere. You'll notice too that this floor is being installed on top of a previously tiled surface. Now we get asked a lot about whether or not our epoxy system can be installed on top of a ceramic tile floor, and the answer is yes. However, you need to use a special primer in order for our system to be able to adhere to the tile. And if you contact us on our website, we'll be able to give you information as to what this primer is and where you can get it. But you first roll out this other primer onto the floor, onto the tiles, and then you install our priming system, which is the black primer you see there, and then on top of that goes our metallic system. So this is a great way to install a metallic epoxy floor without having to remove the tile. Now you'll note that the grout lines are not going to go away. You're still going to see the tile pattern on the floor, but you'll be able to change the appearance of it. now you can see there's an installer with an 18-inch roller, and he's simply rolling the epoxy in a very uniform manner across the floor, long strokes, and this is to start blending the epoxy together. And you see he's going to start on one side, and he's basically going to work his way across the room using up and down motions, and this is the first roll of the floor. So that basically takes care of the first section of this installation. You can see the installer up at the top of the screen. He's finishing up his last roll of the floor, and now the second section is underway. So the process is exactly the same. The 3-gallon kit of epoxy has been mixed, combining the gallon of B in with the 2 gallons of A. It was mixed for 2 to 3 minutes, and now the installer is pouring it out randomly on the floor in the second 360 square foot section of this installation. So here you see the second color is being poured on the floor, the wine red color. It's being poured in the same manner as the orange gold. And again, he's pouring it randomly all throughout this second 360 square foot section. You see the installer up in the first section. He's finishing out with his final roll, and they're basically just gonna repeat this same process in the second section and do the same in the third and the fourth section of this job as well. So here you can see we're taking a look back up at the first section that's been completed, and you can see that about 20 to 25 minutes has gone by and the metallic pigments are beginning to separate and level throughout the space. But once again, because this was done on top of a tile floor, you still see the pattern of the tile in the floor. If the person wanted to get rid of that, they would have either removed the tile completely or done some self-leveling concrete or a skim coat on top of the tile first to get rid of the grout lines so that they would not be visible during the metallic epoxy installation. But in this particular case, the owner of this bar restaurant wanted the pattern of the ceramic tile to still show through after the application of the metallic epoxy. Now once again, a special primer was used in order to be able to install our designer metallic epoxy system on top of this ceramic tile. So please contact us for more information on the primer that is necessary in order for this installation to be possible. You can contact us on our website at www.epoxyplus.com. So now you see the installer finishing up mixing of the last material for the last section of this floor, and once again it's going to be spread out, poured in ribbons all over this last section of the floor. There's really no particular pattern. The installer is just making sure that he gets some of the material everywhere in this last section to be completed. So here you can see the installer is just finishing up the final roll, and there's a picture of what the finished floor looks like. You can still see the tile pattern through, but it's transformed this floor from a bland ceramic tile floor into a designer metallic epoxy floor. For more information, please visit our website.